In this lecture, we will discuss about the ecological succession. An ecological succession is more like a process by which the communities of the plants and animal species in an area are replaced or changed into another over the period of time. Now, for example, in very beginning, when it's completely empty or untouched habitat, there was a bare rock. Now this bare rock will develop a lichens over it. Now these lichens will have now the small plants over the time, and these small plants will further develop into the grasses and the perennials. Now these grasses and perennials will further be developed into the shade intolerant trees like pines over the million of years. And then finally there will be a large trees like oaks will be developed. Now this whole stage where the one species is replaced by the another one in a particular area with respect to the time, this is what we call an ecological successions. In the very beginning, when we have the bare rock to the grasses, this is what we call a pioneer species because they come at the very first. And then when it converts into the trees like pines, this is what we call the intermediate stage. And then finally, we reach a climax community where there's a large trees like oak. So this whole process is basically involves both biotic and the abiotic component. So we can write it here. It involves both biotic and abiotic component. Now these ecological successions can be of two types. The first one what we call as a primary succession, whereas the second one is what we call the secondary succession. Now when we talk about the primary succession, this is where over the pure and unoccupied area, means completely untouched area, it happens there. So in here, it is a pioneer species, it invades here first. So the pioneer species will always be there. Species, yeah. And they show the high growth rate. So let me write it here, that's important. High growth rate, but shorter lifespan. Shorter lifespan. All right. But here in the when we talk about the secondary succession, here the growth rate is basically slower, and there will be a higher lifespan. So it's completely opposite in secondary succession. I'll come to the secondary succession itself. Now, as we have said that the primary succession here, it is completely untouched area, untouched, right? Or you can say a pure area. Here it is not. At one point of a time, there do exist ecological community here, means it is not untouched. It is not untouched. There do exist natural vegetation. All right. Now, if we see that, obviously these primary successions are nowadays are difficult to observe because on planet Earth, I don't think there is any space or place left where there is not vegetation. So it's difficult to see these days. But a secondary succession, you can easily see them. For example, like an area which has been completely inundated or devastated by the hurricanes, or Kagatao Island was there due to the the volcano, active volcano was there. It destroyed all the area, but now we have a traces that the forests are coming back again. So that's an example of the secondary succession. So this is what we can say. Now this terminal stage is what we call a climax community. So yes, the primary succession takes a larger amount of a time with higher growth rate but the lower time span. And here the lifespan is higher but the growth rate is smaller. Now there are two things. Now if the succession take place on land, if succession take place on land, this is what we call zerach. Whereas if the succession take place over water body, this is what we call hydrarch. These are the few terms that you should remember. Now, apart from that, when we talk about the ecological successions, so there are stages. So we have discussed this thing with respect to the examples over here. So we can describe it into the stages also. These stages are like the first stage is nudation, that is the stage 1. The stage 2 is what we call the invasion. Now the invasion itself has a substages that's called the migration, which can may take place. It also include the colonization. It also include the assasses. Well, the assasses means establishment. And then the third stage, what we call as a competition. The fourth stage, what we call as a reaction. And the fifth stage, what we call as a climax. Now here, as we have discussed, the nudation is where the pioneer species occurs, and the climax is what we call as where the climax. It's a terminal stage, the ending of the stage, and all these in the middle stages, where all the changes happens and how the succession develops. This is what we call as SERA, SERE, or we can also call them as a SERA, SERA. Right, this is a word which has been given to these things. That's called the successional stage. Now all these in the later stages we will talk about the allogenic and the autogenic. Means there are different criteria as how succession happens. Sometimes it happens through the water body, sometimes happen on the land. So this is how it occurs. So if there is no soil destroyed, that is called the primary. If the soil formation has already taken place, that is called secondary. So this is all about the ecological successions. We can also I want to share one more example for this thing, is that a lithosphere. Yes, lithosphere is actually an example of the Ziraj, because when the lithosphere develop, it occurs through the four stages. First is basically the crustaceous lichen, then herbaceous and shrubbaceous, and the woodland stage. So this is how the lithosphere develop. So if you are a geography optional student, then it's pretty much these things. And you can give an example even if the in the means answer if you want to write somewhere. So example is basically the Krakatau island. That is the living example where the ecological succession can be witnessed, a secondary ecological successions. Apart from that, we have almost covered our series here for the ecological successions. So let's jump on to the next one.